The church has failed a lot of its following. The church has to take some responsibility in that. We give so little currency to people that are risking their lives or reputation to help out society, and we give all of our currency to things that are actually degenerate.
You were talking about how conservatives have failed. It's our fault. And in a lot of ways, Christians have failed. The church has failed because we've taken on the world's way of doing things.
There's an imbalance on what we're sharing, and we're feeding the algorithm with that information as well.
And we've been afraid to disappoint people. We've been so, quote, kind that we've accepted some really evil things.
We're worried about getting canceled. We're worried about what the blowback would be. And we allow these kind of weird, crazy ideologies to creep into our lives.
He said it, and I'm emphasizing it because I mean it. We've turned it over to some beta, soy level, limp-wristed cucks out there who are just okay to sit back, collect the money, and wear their expensive shoes and watches and their, whatever get up they're wearing today. The masculine men aren't running things anymore.
No.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Chad Prather Show. You know where you are, you know why you're here, and we're glad you are. I want you to go to where podcasts are offered, specifically the audio ones, where you can leave us a 5-star rating because that's what we deserve. And we also want you to leave us a review. You know the rules. I don't care what you say. Just leave the review. Tell us something good or something bad, whatever, but be honest about it. Try to anyway. We've been having some great conversations lately, and you guys know that I've been doing this a long time, and I don't always get kind of like giddy on the inside. I don't even know at 51 years old as a red-blooded American male I can use the word giddy, but I'm giddy. Like I feel it. Like there's a little tingle in my sphincter right now because I am just excited about what we're here to do. Yeah, I know y'all are looking around. You're going, you're not in your normal studio. I'm not. I'm up here in Plano, Texas. I'm in the mothership. I'm here where the guys who helped make this whole deal possible with Mission Studios, they were gracious enough to say, "Hey, Hurricane Beryl is coming into town. Why don't you come up here and have some tapings and some conversations in our studio?" So that's where we are. And I'm excited, and the reason I am is because a while back I started seeing this talking head on Instagram. There's a bunch of them out there. There's a lot of people out there who are trying to punch through the smoke, but there was this one particular guy, and as I would watch his little clips on Instagram and the other social media platforms, let me put it to you this way. I don't even know that I was interested so much in what he was saying. It was the way he was saying it. And then once I fell in love with this guy, I started really paying attention to what he was saying, and I fell in love with that too. So he's here with me today, and I'm excited that he is. Matt Kim, host of the Matt Kim podcast. Thanks for coming in. How are you?
Hey, can we clap or something?
Yeah. Crowd goes wild.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I think people are going to be a little bit disappointed because I speak differently naturally than I do kind of when I do my presentational type of mode.
Yeah,
so
I think we all do that.
Yeah.
My kids, my daughters have always said that whenever the cameras come on or I'm on a stage, I turn into my preacher voice. I don't know that that's in any way avoidable at this point. But there's a certain cadence when you're doing it.
Yeah, I try to be a little more specific with my words, especially in the shorter form. I'm trying to give people opportunity to either read it or listen to it, knowing that I have 2 minutes to get my point across.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to do it in a way that I'm not wasting words. But then you go on to these podcasts and you start rambling on and on and on and on.
Well,
and it gets a little different.
I want you to feel comfortable to ramble today because we're just going to hang out. And this is pretty laid back. Anybody that watches this show knows it's pretty laid back. You got a great show. I'm fascinated with your voice and what you've been saying because it resonates so much inside my soul. And I'm on this... I live on a roller coaster journey, up, down. God's got his hands on my shoulder. Sometimes he's kicking my ass, and then other times he's really close to me, and then other times he kind of leaves me alone, and I'm struggling with all this stuff. So it's a journey that I think most men go on if they really are pursuing truth and are pursuing God leading them into truth. And that's kind of where I am right now. So your show came along, and your clips came along right at the right time for me. And I was sitting there one day. And it's just like the light bulb went off, just kind of like that jarring in your thing, in your soul where you go, I'm going to reach out to Matt Kim and just see if he responds back. And at the time, you know how it is. Sometimes you reach out to people and they either have people or they don't see their messages or whatever. And dude, you messaged right back. And I was like, I'd love to have you on the show. And you were like, I'd love to do it. And we didn't know each other. And I said, well, we can either do it remote or in person. And you said, well, in person's a lot more fun. So here you are. Hey, guys, let's take a break in the show real quick. I want to tell you about my friends over at United Patriot Supply. You know, I'm a gun guy. I love my firearms. I love stockpiling my ammunition. I've got all the stuff out there, but sometimes you run into some things that are a little bit hard to find. That's when I turn to my good buddies over at UnitedPatriotSupply.com. They're not only my friends, they're partners with this show, and I'm proud to know them because they deliver. And let me tell you, when I say they deliver, if there's stuff out there you're looking for and you're having a hard time finding it, I guarantee you there's a very good chance they're going to have what you're looking for. So go out there and check them out, UnitedPatriotSupply.com. Right now, they got a deal going. When you buy a firearm, you can get up to 5 ounces of free silver with every order. So they got a silver incentive program because United Patriot Supply, they're also United Patriot Coin, and you've heard us talk about them as well. So you buy a firearm, you get silver with it. You get a free ounce of silver for every $500 you spend on guns. That's up to 5 free ounces. So you buy a $2,500 gun, guess what? You're going to get 5 pieces of silver. That's a pretty cool deal. So check it out. It's a combined promotion between United Patriot Supply and United Patriot Coin. And just get over there and get to know those guys. I tell you, you're going to love them, and they're going to be a regular stop and shop for you. So head over to UnitedPatriotSupply.com. How'd you get started in the talking business?
Well, it's funny. I was telling the Uber driver on the way here today the same story. So if you're watching, Uber driver, I told them I'm going to be here.
Uber drivers. I've made good friends with Uber drivers.
It was about a little bit over a year and a half ago, and my daughter was very young. She was about 6 months old. And I was downstairs. I was yelling at the TV, probably at Sean Hannity or something like this, because he really gets people upset. And I'm yelling at the TV, and my wife comes running down the stairs, and she's like, "Shut up! You're gonna wake up your daughter. Go tell someone that cares." I was like, "Huh, you're right. I'm going to." And that's the moment it started. It was this aha moment where I feel like I have something to say. I want to say it, and I went to the office the very next day, and I Googled how to start a podcast. And I turned to my buddy Will, who was working with me. I said, "Will, we're going to start a podcast." And he said the best thing ever. He looked right at me and says, "I like podcast." And that was it. We started just like that, and had never been in a podcast studio before, had never done a podcast before. The only familiarity I had with podcasts were I consumed them from time to time. I don't even consume that much content to begin with. And one day we're like, we're just going to start a podcast. And the first 6 months that you're in a podcast world, nobody listens because it's not very good. You don't know what you're saying. You don't understand who you are. You don't have your voice yet. You don't have your cadence yet. You don't understand how the technology works. You don't understand how social media works. You don't understand any of it. And you watch all the gurus online, and the gurus are all lying to you. They don't know either.
They don't know.
Because if they knew, they'd be making content, not selling you their content. Mm-hmm. And after time, you find your voice, you find your cadence, you find out what works for you. And what works for me is I just want to do what comes natural to me. I don't want to manufacture content. I don't want to chase content. I don't want to chase ideas, chase views. I just want to put out to the world what I'm thinking at the moment I decide I'm recording. And that's literally what I put out there.
Well, the insights that you have are phenomenal. And I was just listening to your most recent show with you and your co-host there. And I was listening to it, and I was like, I was feeling conviction. There were a couple of things you said I wanted to like argue back. So like, hey, I do that. And he's right. And I don't like that he's right about this that he's saying. But I'm also at this stage in the game in life where I'm trying to be vulnerable and listen and be willing to change and absorb some things. And the thing that, when I said earlier, it wasn't so much what you were saying at first, it was the way you were saying it. What I mean by that, and this is the word that I use to describe you, and you've probably heard it, you're sincere. You're sincere. There's no pretense about you. It's genuine. You're not putting on a facade, and I like that. What you just said a second ago is true. I hold to this. I don't always know what I'm going to say when I sit down with somebody, but I was like, you know what? I love the stream of consciousness and what comes down to that. And usually that's kind of when God shows up in the middle of it, and it just becomes a great thing for other people to listen to. But you've had, some points of note. I mean, your day-to-day stuff that you're putting out there is incredible. But, I mean, you had Andrew Tate on, who, I don't know, garnered YouTube like 1.82 million views. It's crazy numbers. Anything that dude does just blows up. What do you think that phenomenon is?
Well, I think he's, number one, the best podcast interviewee out there. He has this ability to give you multiple answers to a question so that it gives you options on where you want to take the interview. And he has also this crazy ability to take a question later on in the interview and close a loop from earlier and reference not only what he said, but what you said. So it's this ability to be a active listener and have a very high ability to remember what he said.
Yeah.
So I think that's very different. I've never encountered that before. I think he may be one of the smartest guys I've ever met.
He's a genius. There's no doubt about it. Love him or hate him. And a lot of people do hate him.
Which I can understand why some people don't like him. I understand why some people don't like his ideas. But as far as him and his personality and being online and understanding how the internet works and how to communicate, I think he's the best.
We had a mutual friend from Britain who, I say a mutual, he's a friend of mine, a friend of Andrew's. He made a point to us recently when we were in Alabama together. He said, I know Andrew Tate. He said, and he's told me, he said, one of the things his goals is to do is to use what he's saying to stir people up. Hey, you're a Christian, be one. You say you believe these things? Okay, get mad at me enough to be what you say you are. Did you get a takeaway like that from him?
I think he believes 100% what he says. And I think that's most important to me these days. Does the person speaking believe what he's saying? Yeah. And if they do, then I'm willing to listen. That's kind of my bar on how I decide if I'm going to give someone my time.
Yeah.
Are they honest and genuine in their belief? And if they believe what they're saying, then it's worth listening to. If I feel like whatever they're telling you is paid propaganda, I don't care if I agree with you. I have no interest in what you're saying. I believe that he believes what he's saying. And I think that's the number one thing that drives him, is that he would rather die than comply. Yeah. And I love that about him. You know, again, regardless of how you feel about him, he has so much conviction in his own belief on his mental models of life that he's willing to die for that. And I don't think there's a lot of people in the world that would say the same thing.
Yeah, no, his convictions are there. And again, people can choose whether they like him or not. I appreciate the realness of it. Hey guys, I want to welcome back to the program one of our old friends, Fume. I don't know if you've heard it or not, but the flavored air category, yeah, that's a thing. It's quickly becoming a leading alternative to vaping and smoking. Yeah, it's a whole new movement towards better habits led by Fume themselves. Listen, we've all got bad habits. I've got some, you've got some, we've all got some. And let's talk about bad habits. You know, sometimes you're out with friends and they're all reaching for those bad habits and you feel the urge to not be left out. So you reach for your bad habit, or you try to borrow one of theirs. Well, what if I was to tell you there's a better alternative that will help you kick that bad habit in an enjoyable way? And it's something you can take out with you and use anywhere. Fume, it's an award-winning flavored air device. That's right, flavored air isn't like vaping. If vapor was compared to sticky soda, well, Fume cores, they're closer to like herbal teas. It actually is not bad for you. Fume has lots of delicious flavors to choose from. They got the crisp mint, the orange vanilla, the flavored air. You can satisfy your oral fixation through a passive diffusion system that utilizes no electronics, no vapor, no combustion. It's going to draw the flavor into your mouth. Fume's going to fill the void, ditching those bad habits that you have out there, and you can still have something to reach for when the time comes. It's not a vape. There's no vapor. You can use it anywhere. No nicotine. It's not addictive. Non-toxic flavors. It's a guilt-free alternative. No batteries. You don't even have to charge the thing. And guess what? If you're like me, you can fidget with it. That's right. It's going to calm the anxiety, give you something to do with your hands. It's got the magnets, got the snaps, got the clicks. Check it out. Fume has served over 300,000 customers, and you can be their next success story. For a limited time, use my code CHAD, I spell it Chad, to get a free gift with your journey pack. Head over to tryfume.com. That's tryfum.com. Use promo code Chad. You can scan the QR code there on the screen to get a free gift with your order today. That's tryfume, F-U-M, tryfume.com/Chad. Don't forget, use promo code Chad. You had Tucker Carlson on. That's wild. How did that come about? It was a great interview, by the way.
Well, thank you.
He said some good things about you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tucker, if you're watching.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened. One day, someone from his team started following me, and I kind of geeked out because I geek out over stupid things, and I think that's fine. And I said, oh my gosh, I love Tucker. I can't believe you guys are following me. And Alexi, who's their booker, responded and said, well, good news. He actually told me to start following you because he wants to see what you're up to. Wow. I said, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I was like, oh, Matt, be cool. Don't be a nerd. I was like, oh, this is so cool. This is so amazing. Like, I appreciate you guys. And ever since then, we've kind of been in touch. And when he launched the new network, I said, I'd love to meet Tucker, not even interview or be interviewed by. I just want an opportunity to meet him because I feel like a lot of what I do is inspired by what he's done in the past. So I just wanted to pick his brain and get his understanding of how he maybe does things or thinks about things. And they were like, hey, why don't you just interview him instead? I said, okay.
Wow.
Amazing. And a day or two later, I said, I called them back. I said, I want to do it live. And they're like, are you sure? Have you ever done anything like that live before? I said, I've never done an interview like this live before. Actually, Tucker will be by far the biggest interview I've ever done in my life. But I want to do it live. And they're like, if you're sure about that, then you can do it. And the reasoning for me was I wanted to put myself in the highest pressure situation possible. Because the entire year of me doing this podcast, I don't feel like I ever asked for it, wanted it. It's just something that kind of happened. And I don't even know if I'm good at it. How will I ever know if this is something I'm meant to do if I don't put myself under the ultimate pressure situation with the most amount of live eyes? There's no room for failure.
Yeah.
If I freeze up and I get scared or I panic or it just doesn't go well, then I'll know in my heart this was not meant for me, that maybe I just got lucky in the beginning and maybe I should pursue and spend my life doing something else. So I want to put that pressure on me. And that morning I woke up for that Tucker interview. Was the sickest I've ever been in my, I don't get sick.
Really?
Ever. I've never had COVID. I've never had the flu. So when people say, Matt, you should get the flu shot or the COVID shot, I'm like, I'm good. Like, I've never had either. I'm pretty sure I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I was the sickest I've ever been. And that morning, right before we recorded, I, decongested, try to clear out my system as best I could. And for the first time, I got together the guys that are typically in the room with me. And for the first time, I said, guys, we don't ever do this, but I'd like to pray. I'd like to pray before this interview. I feel like it's a big moment, and maybe we don't do this enough, but I'd like to say a prayer. And I said, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm here. I'm sick. Just help me, guide me. Let it be the way that you want it to be. And kind of left it like that. It's the first time I've ever prayed to my friends, ever in my life. And after the prayer, I felt better. I thought the interview went fantastic. And 5 minutes after the interview's over, I'm sick again.
Wow. And there was no indication during the interview that you were sick.
I was so sick that day.
I would have never known that.
That was probably the sickest I've ever been in my life.
Really?
Yeah.
Satan.
And it's crazy how that works.
The devil. It really is crazy.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, dude, and I say that tongue in cheek about, this is where I'm at. And there's a lot of my audience who are trying to figure out who this version of Chad is right now, because there's some things going on in me, and I'm really trying to be sensitive to it. But like, we're in a battle.
Yes.
We're in a battle. We're in a battle on a personal level. We're in a battle for this country, our world, our culture, our way of life, and it's a spiritual battle. Yeah. And I don't care who gets bothered by that. I'm not saying that on the physical plane you're not supposed to be responsible and take personal responsibility and do some things. But man, we're in a spiritual battle. Have you seen that? Like, are you seeing that play out when you just flip on the news or social media or whatever? You're like, oh man, what are we going to do? Where are we going from here?
I definitely think that we are in a spiritual battle of good and evil. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's ramping up. And actually, I think it's good that it becomes that we're more aware to it, because it's always been going on. Just the fact that it feels like the battle is going on and the war is going on means that we're aware of the battle, we're aware of the war. And that means it gives reason for people to get involved. I think for the last 10, 15, 20 years, we've been very lax to it. We've allowed it to happen to the way it's become. And the fact that we're having these conversations actually gives me hope that there is a possibility that people are gathering to fight back against this evil, because the last 20 years, it's been pretty wild, man.
Nuts.
Yeah. I mean, and there's no explanation for it. It's just that, and something that I talked about in the podcast right before, is that we've allowed it to happen. We saw the craziness and we were overly accepting of the other side. And I don't want to be polarizing, but the reality is we allowed a lot of the evils to penetrate our lives. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I believed that maybe a year ago. But as I start to travel the world, travel the country, have conversations with people, it's becoming more and more apparent is that we allowed it to happen. And I think we need to take personal responsibility for that first, is that we need to affect change. And by affecting change, we need to change ourselves. If you think our politicians are corrupt, our leaders are corrupt, they're corrupt because we're corrupt. If we were good people, then we would elect good people. We are flawed people. We are corrupt people. We are almost joyous in our sin. And therefore, we elect people and we elevate those type of people. It almost makes us feel better about our own faults. Is that if we elevate people that are flawed, we feel better about the flaws in our life. And I feel like people are becoming aware of that. People are willing to make less money, to work for jobs that maybe are bettering the world. We see a shift there. And I think that's all a good thing.
Yeah. You were just recently up in Moscow, Idaho, which is a fun story because you were born there, and you were born next door to Pastor Doug Wilson,
Yes.
and you interviewed Doug Wilson, which is a weird, wild coming around circle for you. Because, I mean, you guys live like in a little triplex or duplex. I mean, like the walls were attached.
Yes.
And you were born here, and he was here. And by the way, he's from Moscow, Idaho for like 3 months, okay?
Yeah.
Just like I was born in New Jersey 4 months before moving to Georgia. But it's funny, our mutual friend Sky Corbin, he texted me yesterday, and he said, hey, I see you're having Matt Kim come into town. Remind him that he's a communist plant from Korea. And I was like, I will. But shout out to Sky Corbin. Dude's a mess. But
I love Sky.
Sky's a good dude. He's a good dude. And he's been on the show, and one of my buddies, wild dude. But you were up there with Pastor Doug Wilson. I've done some events with Doug Wilson. And I like the guy. But to your point, he kind of took the bull by the horns and said, you know what, we're going to change this community where people are moving to be there. You tell people about that, and they're like, oh, so he started a cult? And I was like,
not at all.
No, they're just doing community the way I think that biblically and constitutionally you should do community as citizens. What was your takeaway from that?
I mean, some people would call it Christian nationalism.
Right.
They call it
Just
maybe,
polarizing word.
Yeah.
People are losing their minds over that.
They call it ultra conservative. They try to put all these monikers on it.
Yeah.
But I got to see it firsthand on how it works. And you can call it whatever you want. Whatever their system of community is, it clearly works. Because I got invited to so many people's homes. All these people, they're like, oh, Matt's coming. You know, we've heard stories of his parents that were here before. And everyone's inviting me to their house. I sat at so many dinner tables. And all the children eat at the dinner table with the adults. They were all smart, respectful, well-spoken. They're all involved in the conversation, regardless if they're 5 years old or 15 years old or 25 years old. They all stick together. There's whole huge sense of community, of family. They all get along, and they have set core values that they don't stray from. And I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah.
I love the idea that I went to Christ Church, which is one of Pastor Doug's churches over there. And I was in the worship service with them. And it may be the first church I went to that the children were in the main service with the adults.
Yeah.
You're talking not only 6-year-olds or 7-year-olds, I'm talking all the way to 6-month-olds. And there's a little chatter, there's a little bit of the kids rustling around and a little bit of crying, but you don't even notice it. And I asked why that is. Why don't you have a children's service? Because every church has a children's service. And they're like, you're teaching your children that God is for the adults and the children are to be separate. You're supposed to teach them that this is a family endeavor and that you're supposed to do it together. But you're separating what's for adults and what's for children. And I really love that idea.
I do too.
That they all do it together. They eat together, they pray together, they worship together. And that's something that we've actually actively started implementing into our own lives because I love that idea. And I started looking at maybe the children's service that my kid used to be in. And I was like, it's babysitting. It's not Sunday school. It's babysitting. They do a couple of songs, they play some games, they watch some TV. I don't want my kid to do that. I want my kid to be actively involved and learn what I'm learning.
Yeah.
So there's a few things that I've picked up from being out there.
Yeah, historically, you look at our founding fathers, there's studies out there. They spent time with adults. There's no I could get on a soapbox on that whole deal, but let me just suffice it to say I agree with you on that, and I agree with what they're doing. And I've seen a number of folks who said, we just had my friend. She's a teenage therapist. Tessa Stuckey was on the show recently talking about kids, screens, and things like that, and how you got to get those screens out of their faces because it's really ruining their minds. And we're using that as a device to babysit our kids. But then we go into church and do the exact same thing. I want my kids to know that I worship. I want my kids to see me worship, that expression of it, so that when they get a little bit older, it's not an unusual thing for them.
Teach them to sit still, to actively listen.
There's a discipline to it, yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy, especially if you're trying to teach a 2-year-old to sit there for 30 minutes through a sermon. It's not the easiest thing to do. But the easy way out is, okay, watch a screen. And we do that with our kids all the time.
Yeah.
And trust me, my kid is 2 years old, almost 2 years old. We are actively trying to not use any screen. It's not the easiest.
It's hard.
It's very difficult, especially when all of her kind of friends, she don't really have friends because she's 2.
Yeah.
But her friends and all their parents are giving tablets and phones to their kids. And my kid's like, I want one. I'm like, no.
That's hard. That's a hard deal. And it is hard. I mean, the world's working against us. But back to your point, you talked about this extensively, and it was such a good episode, the most recent one you did. Well, I say this episode, it's the most recent from this taping, because this will come out next week. It's so, but you were talking about how conservatives have failed. It's our fault. And in a lot of ways, Christians have failed. The church has failed because we've taken on the world's way of doing things. The thing that I got a little convicted about was you were talking about how, people, performing oral sex butt naked on the streets of San Francisco during a pride parade, and you got all these conservatives that are retweeting or reposting the images of these things in order to make a point. But it's like you're helping these people go viral.
Yeah.
We're actually lending ourselves to the promotion of that filth.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, I in my heart, I've always tried to say, okay, I don't want this promoted. There are some things that I think that people should see because they need to be aware of what's going on. But, there's evil out there. People need to be aware of it. But man, to what degree are we promoting that more and more and helping them accomplish their goal of going, quote, viral?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a tough thing to do because I understand people say, well, we're trying to bring awareness to it. I get that. But we live in a clicks and views economy.
Yeah.
Clicks and views are the currency of the world. It's actually all people care about. People care about clicks and views more than pretty much money, more than relationship, more than what they own. Clicks and views is a driving force behind everything. And if that's the current currency of our world, by sharing that content, you're giving it your currency. And you don't need to do that because a lot of the people, especially when you see during the BLM riots, people dancing on the cop cars, they don't care about the BLM riots. They want to go viral by dancing on cop cars. That's why they do it. If you stop giving them the clicks and views, if you stop giving them the attention in the attention economy, then most of that actually goes away. People don't want to risk going to jail for nothing, right? They did
it for the gram.
They're literally doing it for the gram.
I literally broke my leg, riding around in those cars, spinning around.
Yeah.
These guys doing these takeovers in the four-way deal,
exactly,
with stolen cars or whatever.
Humans naturally have a risk-reward tolerance that they live with. This matrix that they have within themselves, and the reward is so great for going viral and going super viral that they're willing to take the risk. But if the reward isn't there, then now there's an imbalance between the risk and reward.
Yeah.
Meaning they're no longer willing to take that risk for a possibility of 10 views? Why? Why would you risk your life and risk your reputation and risk all these things you do if no one's going to watch it? They do it because they want people to watch. And by sharing the content, you're just giving them exactly what they want.
So what do you think we do? I mean, from our perspective, which is a little more values driven, I think. I mean, how do we proactively take back, whether it's social media or the content we're putting out there? Because obviously we're on screens, right? We talked about taking screens away from kids and then people doing it for clicks and likes. I mean, we have a career of being on a screen or at least being on some form of a platform. What do you think's the right pattern on that?
I think you need to share and comment and like on things that you actually agree with, things that you think provide value. Because if the clicks and views are the currency, then give the currency to things that actually embetter society. We give so little currency to good ideas. We give so little currency to people that are risking their lives or reputation to help out society. And we give all of our currency to things that are actually degenerate, right? Oh, share this. Look how stupid this is. We share that all the time. But how often do we share? How smart was this? How much value did this bring to my life? You know, you see that maybe you see someone give a good Bible verse and they give a commentary on it and you think about it and it's important to you. And maybe even pause and you watch the whole thing. But actually the shares on that is very low. Mm-hmm. Why do we not share that? And we share the things of the naked pride parade. We share that all the time. There's an imbalance on what we're sharing and we're feeding the algorithm with that information as well. The algorithm takes what's popular, what's being shared, what are people engaging with, and that's what we're going to show more of. So your share actually is exponential in the economy of clicks and views. We share the wrong information. Share the people you care about. Share the people that you think are honest and genuine and are actually trying to do good in the world. Those are the people we should be elevating, not people that we think are destroying society. Yeah. We're just giving our shares, our clicks and views, and our currency to the wrong direction.
I was reading through Proverbs, and I think I brought it up on a recent episode. I was reading through Proverbs where it says, there's 6 things that God hates and 7 that are an abomination. And the last thing on the list says the one who stirs up contention among people. And I was like, dang it. I do that. Because people always say, Chad, you really love to stir the pot. And boy, I do. I really do. And then once I read that, I guess it was last week, and then I was listening to your episode. I was like, okay, God, you're trying to tell me something here. And I really have been in a soul-searching deal of going, okay, so what is the right thing to do? And I think you're right. We got to share. Because, again, we can talk about what's wrong with society. When are we going to start telling people this is what we do to make it right again? So you come back to guys like Pastor Doug Wilson, who is real quick for people when they find out about him to want to immediately label him some kind of a radical. Well, he is a radical, and you should be unapologetic about that. What was it you said? We've been too, I guess you didn't say it exactly this way, but you said we've been too nice in society. We want everybody to like us. We want to say, well, we're taking the moral high ground. We're willing to forgive all of these people and say, I accept you. But again, our acceptance has gone so dadgum far. Because Jesus wasn't accepting, and he wasn't always kind.
No.
Not by the standards that he was pretty brutal.
He used to flip tables.
He was pretty brutal. I mean, when if you watched, I just went and watched, I'd never watched it before, the series The Chosen. I don't know if you've ever watched that before. Okay. I'm encouraging everybody to go watch it. So when Dallas Jenkins was making that, they actually made it here. The set was over in west of Fort Worth in Weatherford, Texas. Back when he was making this, and this has been, about 5 years ago when they started that project, I went over and we interviewed him for an episode I was doing with The Blaze and sat down with him. I really didn't know what this guy was making. I didn't know what the story was. Okay, it was another film about Jesus and the life of Jesus. So I really never watched it. I mean, how many times can you watch a thing about the life of Jesus? Well, last week I started watching it. And dude, I have wept. I was like, oh my God, you're talking to me. You're talking to me like through this television show, and I was watching this thing. And it was like just the reality of Jesus who he didn't care so much because they dramatize the teachings of Christ in a way that you're like, okay, that's real life. Most shows about Jesus, they just quote, him quoting something that you've read in the New Testament. They actually put it to life, and they reword it, they dramatize it a little bit, but it's true to the New Testament account. And I'm sitting there watching, I was like, Jesus didn't mind disappointing people. And you could tell the way this actor carried this thing out, it was so genius. You could tell that even through the actor, it's like, I still love these people, but I don't mind disappointing you. And we've been afraid to disappoint people, We've been so, quote, kind that we've accepted some really evil things in our culture. So in a way, I think in a large part it's our fault.
I mean, I think the biggest one is when you get into the trans debate. Are we allowed to say that here?
Yeah, you say
YouTube.
You can say it. I mean? Trust me, we're brother. We're so how this is. We've had so many marks against us over the years. We just throw it up against the wall, and if it doesn't stick, it doesn't stick. But yeah, you can say whatever you want.
Well, because when you get into that debate, so many conservatives will say, well, as long as it's You can do whatever you want in your life as long as it's not affecting the children. And that's been my argument for the longest time also. Do whatever you want as long as it's not affecting the children. And I actually think that was wrong. The right answer was, no, that's wrong.
It's wrong.
It's wrong. But we qualify it because we don't want to be rude and unaccepting of people. But we don't agree. But we say, no, as long as it's not for the kids. And then people are like, oh, we can get behind that. Like, don't mess with the kids, but as an adult, do whatever you want. No, the reality is, like, it's wrong. You shouldn't do that. It's destroying God's work. It's a really weird thing to do. But we are so accepting of that. And we don't have to be. But try to be polite. And we're worried about getting canceled. We're worried about what the blowback would be. And we allow these kind of weird, crazy ideologies to creep into our lives. And then now we're looking around going, man, how do we get here? Well, I know exactly how we got here. We were nice and accepting, and we shouldn't have been. Yeah. And I'm not an extremist. I don't think I am.
The Overton window. I mean, you trust me, it's moved. You're an extremist. You're sitting out on the edge, dude. But no, you're right. I do a comedy bit every now and then, talk about, they call you a phobe. You're this phobe. And I said, I'm not afraid of anybody. I'm just intolerant. And it's like, what? And it's like, no, I really am. Like, I'm intolerant of my own shortcomings. I'm intolerant of shortcomings in society. And when I say shortcomings, I'm talking about sin and rebellion and evil things. I've done it. And because people always say, yeah, but you're not perfect. No, I know I'm not perfect. And I've done a lot of things that are wrong. But that doesn't mean I can't call it out. Because I call it out to myself. I confess it before God. And I'm calling it out in society too. Because it's wrong. It's just simply wrong. So I think we're at a point, and help me think through this a little bit, because I think we're at a point where, you don't want to be labeled an extremist or a radical. But the truth is radical in this day and age. And to put it out there is going to, you just talked to Andrew Bailey. I did too, the Attorney General of Missouri. He's great, dude. He's one of us. Yeah. He's just a good old boy. He's one of us.
Yes.
And I asked him about when he went after the whole gender modifying thing in Missouri. He said it was like they unleashed the gates of hell against him. It was just evil, the stuff that they went after him with. And I'm like, at some point in time, we're going to have to toughen up and just kind of take that, because if we're going to talk about the truth and truly compassionately protect people from these evil things that are happening, we're going to have to take the attacks. What do you think?
Well, it's funny. Actually, I was reading the passage from Ephesians yesterday. And I don't know why I read it. It just kind of fell on me. And it was talking about the armor of God. And it's the belt of truth and the sword of the word. And I've been thinking about that all day ever since. Because you would think it's the opposite. That the word and the spirit is the core, what you put on first. And you go to battle with truth. That's kind of how I've lived my life, at least for the last 6 months, I would say, is that truth is my weapon and my core belief is what holds it all together. But actually, after reading it yesterday, it's the opposite. It's the truth that is your core belief, and it's the word and the spirit that's your weapon, which is opposite and actually counterintuitive to what you think it would be.
I never thought about it like that, but you're right.
And I've been thinking about that all day. I don't know what you think about that, but that's what I read yesterday, and I've been mulling on that ever since. Because again, it's different than what I kind of logically think it would be.
I've always thought of the belt of truth as being, that's what holds everything else together. Like your belt keeps everything up, right?
But it's also the first thing you put on.
It's first thing. And because it says, you want to gird your loins, and, the imagery there is a Roman soldier who they wore a skirt basically, and he pulls it up, wraps the tunic, and tucks it in the belt so it becomes one big diaper, and that way they don't get tripped over it whenever they're in battle. And that truth is what holds everything up. And then that sword, which is the word of God, is that extension of truth that you're using to wield out there. But that's a good concept. I've never really thought about it like that, but that's good. But it's weird because you wouldn't think that would be the way it would be.
I would think it'd be the other way around.
Yeah.
That kind of your belief and the word is what holds it together. And it's your truth that you go to battle with. But again, it's the opposite. And I've been thinking about that nonstop for the last 24 hours, ever since I read that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't see that coming.
It's wild. Whenever you find something like that, do you find yourself just kind of meditating on it more and more? And you're like, I just really want to see why did this stick in my spirit? Like, why did this stick in my brain?
Yeah. I don't even know how verses, I'm not a big reader. I'm not a big Bible reader. I don't have a program that I follow. But ever since I've been kind of on this journey of trying to find my own faith, thinking about it and talking public about it, I've never done this before.
Yeah. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think that's just always how I've been, that I don't mind talking about anything. It's just not been a part of my regular conversation.
Yeah.
It's become a big part of my conversation, I'm going to say in the last month, ever since my pilgrimage to Moscow. That's what I've been calling it, my pilgrimage. Ever since then, I've been more unapologetic about it, is really what it is.
Yeah.
And I think about it more, and I read more Bible. And when I read Bible, I don't really have a program that I go through. I just kind of close my eyes. I'm like, I want to read the Bible. And I get a verse. And every time I open up that verse, it applies to exactly what's important to me at that moment.
Wow.
It's just happened every single time. And sometimes I'll think about somebody, and when I'm thinking about them, I'll get a verse and I'll send it to them. And they'll be like, wow, this applies to me as well. And I don't know how that works. I don't know how that happens. I think God works in just really mysterious and funny ways. I think that's more than mysterious. I like funny because I think it's hilarious. And I found myself sending Bible verses to a lot of people a lot of times now.
That's interesting. It's an interesting thing. Like I've kind of watched your journey. You're right. You've kind of evolved a little bit. I have too in some things. I mean, I'm a comedian. I'm not a preacher.
I've noticed it a lot in your podcasting,
dude. It's just like there's something going on, and the way I've described it is I told one of my mentors, my spiritual father and pastor, Wade Trimmer. I said to him on the phone not long ago. I said, it's like God spoke to me and said, I've made a huge deposit in you when you were young, and now I'm making some withdrawals. And I was like, I'd really rather if you didn't, because I kind of like just going out and doing comedy and making people laugh and having a good time with people, and then, bitching about politics and stuff like that. And it's like God's got his hands on both shoulders, just kind of pressing down, going, no, we're going to dig this out of you for a little while. So it's weird. That's why I hesitate, because even in this conversation, I don't want people to walk away going, oh, Matt Kim's got a faith-based podcast or some kind of thing.
It's definitely not.
It's not.
It's not.
And neither is mine in that regard, even though I'm doing more and more of it. It's kind of this evolution of it. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care. Because this, to me, I've always said podcasting is like my therapy. It's on my chest. I want to get it off. And I just want to talk about the things that are going on. Sometimes I yell and scream, and sometimes I cry, and sometimes I don't know. It's just weird, but it's a journey.
I don't think we're all called to be evangelists. I don't think that's my calling in life. I don't think I'm ever going to be a preacher. I don't think that's something that is in my cards at all. But something Pastor Doug Wilson said to me was, even if you're doing a quote unquote secular endeavor, there's no reason that faith and your mission should be one of the core values that you align with.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't mean you can't make music, or you can't do comedy, you can't do other things in life. You don't have to go preaching everywhere you live, but it should still be a core value that you believe in. And if that's a part of you and that's something that you care so much about, then you should be unapologetic in your belief. Actually, I watched this thing with Jordan Peterson on Piers Morgan. I think it was a week ago. And Piers Morgan asked Jordan Peterson, are you a Christian? Do you believe in God? And Jordan Peterson, well, I think some things are meant to be private. I said, that's such a cowardice thing to say, right? If you believe, why you're teaching men, if your role is to try to teach men to have personal responsibility, how can you not own one of the most important things to you if it's important to you? The fact that you are so private about it and not willing to say it out loud shows that you actually don't believe it. That's what I think. I found that very disappointing. I know a lot of people like him. He went from a guy I like to a guy that I just don't respect anymore. Yeah, I thought it was cowardice.
Our friend Larry Alex Taunton, good friend of mine. He's an author. He's a believer. He's a debater. He kind of made a name for himself traveling around to major universities around the world, debating atheists like Christopher Hitchens and Dawkins and these guys. And he wrote an article for the Federalist where he called out Jordan Peterson and said, actually, what you're saying about God in these days right now, you're actually dangerous because what you're saying is not the full scope of truth. Peterson responded back to him and really called him out and said, called him some names, which I caused me to have some disrespect there. But it really, my Southern colloquialism, I've always said, a bit dog always barks. And I think he really touched a nerve with Peterson because he's not going that full step. And you're right. I mean, like, look, you're a psychologist, and you're like, I'm spitting all over the place. You're a psychologist, and you're trying to help people get into their psyche. But yet you don't want to walk into this full scope and spectrum of this stuff that you're dancing around instead of going into the full knowledge of truth, which is a dangerous place to be. Back to truth. It's a dangerous thing. If it's the truth, let's talk about it.
I mean, be unapologetic in your belief.
Yeah.
I think that, if anything, that's what men need to be doing.
Yeah.
Be unapologetic in your core beliefs.
Yeah.
And I know that there's things on the fringe that you kind of believe, you maybe don't believe, maybe you're unsure of, and I get that. If you don't want to talk about it because you're unsure, I get that. But if it's core belief and it's part of who you are, then why wouldn't you want people to know that? It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah. Do you like doing what you're doing?
I love what I'm doing.
Yeah. You seem to be having a good time with it.
If I could do anything for the rest of my life, this is what I would like to do.
Yeah.
It's just not easy.
It's not easy. Why not?
Well, there are a few ways to support your family doing this. One is you have to take on a lot of advertisers, maybe advertisers you don't agree with. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. It's really hard. And I've said no to pretty much everything in life, which is crazy because, I have a couple of guys that help me out and work with me. They're like, Matt, you can say yes every once in a while. I'm like, no, like if it's something that I wouldn't want my mother to purchase, then I don't feel comfortable telling my audience to purchase it. I just can't do it. And the second is that if you take the propaganda offers, then you can make a lot of money. I get a lot of these calls. Matt, can you talk about this issue, or can you speak on this, or can you take this stance, and we'll pay you X amount of dollars. And even if it's something I agree with, I feel like it's propaganda. And that's just a hard line I've decided to take. And you start saying no to everything, you kind of start pissing a lot of people off,
A lot of people.
Because they're like, we gave you an opportunity, we showed up, we showed interest, we gave you an opportunity to get involved with our organization, and you say no. And we offered to pay you. How can you say no? And I think that even if it's something they agree with, if someone can buy your ideas and buy your words and buy your audience, then it's propaganda. Whether you agree or not, it's propaganda. And I think people think that propaganda means it's something that I only disagree with. And that's just not true. They want you to think about a certain topic at the same exact time to manufacture anger, manufacture emotion, manufacture certain news to trend. And that literally is what propaganda is. And I don't want to do it. And it's not easy to make money if you say no to everything that's basically saying we'll pay you.
It's pretty tough.
It's not easy.
I have some of those folks that reach out to me. Well, they do all the time. And like if it's something I believe in, it's something I feel like it is worth promoting, or something that I'm feeling in my own. And I have these guys, they always say, so what's your rate? And I go, I don't have a rate. Like if you want to send me something, you could send me something. I've always done it that way. And they're always like, dude, you could make a whole lot more money by it. And I was like, yeah, I'm a pretty fat dude. Like I've never missed any meals. And I'm like 51 years old, and I'm probably going to be okay. I could live off the fat of the land for the next couple of weeks anyway, even if I don't eat. So it's a weird thing, but I appreciate you saying that because, you could sell your soul real quick. You really can. You can go to you could start saying some things you don't believe real quick.
It's a slippery slope.
It is.
First it's something that you adamantly agree with. Next time it's something that you kind of agree with. And eventually over time, you get used to the money, you get used to paychecks, and it's really hard to say no. And then finally they're going to hit you with something that you adamantly disagree with. Mm-hmm. But then all of a sudden it's, okay, do I care for my family or do I sell out my audience?
Yeah.
And you're left with this crossroads. And 99% of people, given that choice later on, after they said yes over and over and over again, they choose to go for, well, I got to protect my family, which is also the right thing to do. So I'm going to sell out people I don't know. The only way to avoid that is just to say no from the beginning. And that's just been my stance from day one. And there are a few times that I've hesitated because
it's natural.
Yeah, they'll say, well, we'll pay you $5,000, $10,000 just to take the stance. Like, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot, especially in a Joe Biden economy.
Yeah. If I do 1 or 2 or 3 of those a month, I can make actually a really good living.
Yeah. And to be clear to all of our sponsors, we do not take the Matt Kim approach to podcasting. So all of you who are wanting to advertise,
click the link right here.
Yeah, you'll find the link to all of our sponsors in the description of this podcast episode. No, I appreciate that. There's a lot of different ways to do it. No, and yet everybody does their thing, And
I don't fault people who do go a certain route. Everyone has their own.
I can tell you back when I was at the Blaze, I would have these people on. Like I had this young girl on one time, and she had this story that she'd been through this kind of stuff. And they wanted us to cut to a commercial, and before they wanted us to do a deal for manscaping, which is the electric razor for dudes' balls. And I was like, boy, that fell at the perfect time. I'm sorry, young lady, but I have to talk about dudes shaving themselves in their crotch. So I get you. It can get pretty awkward. Stuff like that.
I mean, I think at some point, somebody on the internet has to say, I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, and if it's successful, then maybe it'll incentivize other people to do it too. And maybe we break out of this kind of propagandist type of economy, because a lot of the independent voices will say, you got to listen to independent voices because the mainstream media is broken. They're just propaganda, and they're just telling you what they want you to think because the sponsors are telling you to believe that. And yes, that's true. But then the people that are saying that are also doing the same exact thing.
Yeah.
At some point, you have to break a cycle. It's like if your dad is alcoholic and your grandfather's alcoholic, and your great grandfather's alcoholic, people think either I'm going to be an alcoholic or I'm not. But at some point, someone needs to break the cycle and for future generations.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now that I'm aware of it, I feel like I have to break the cycle. And maybe it doesn't work. Maybe I fail. It's possible.
I hate you virtuous guys like you.
It sucks. It sucks being the virtuous guy.
I'm telling you.
It sucks.
Oh, my Lord. You and Bobby Sausalito and all these guys, my buddies that are on social media, they're such pure hearts. They suck.
It's not easy.
No, it's not easy, but I respect it. It's one of the reasons why I continue to go out and do live shows, because that, to me, that's my career, that's my bread and butter. And people said, well, you ever going to come off the road? And I was like, as long as I'm able, simply because I can get in front of a big crowd of people. There's no filter, there's no algorithm, there's nothing between me and you, and we can transfer ideas. Hopefully we laugh at them, but we make a point, even in the laughter. So it's one of the things where it's like I can go out and make a living doing that. You're doing, I know you've got some merch and stuff like that and little things.
Bit.
But it's stuff that you do to try to get good. But you've built a good community.
Yeah.
Like even today, you've got a meetup later on this afternoon in the area. And I've noticed that you're doing that in some of the cities you're traveling to.
Yeah, it's something I've never done before and something that people around me advised highly against, because there are a lot of people out there that don't like me.
Sure.
And it could be dangerous.
Sure.
And I remember I was going to Moscow, Idaho. Everything starts at the pilgrimage. And and I was in Spokane, Washington. And I decided I got 3 hours to kill all of a sudden. Just came out of nowhere. I have 3 hours. So I'm going to say, hey, anyone in Spokane, if they want to come say hello, I'm going to be at this park. And people started walking around the park looking for me. And this one couple found me, Angela and Phil. They walked around the park. They found me. They drove 45 minutes to find me. And they showed up specifically because they wanted to pray for me.
Wow.
And that just touched my heart. I've never had someone go out of the way, drive 45 minutes, find me at a random park, never met me before. We don't know each other. They just felt like they were supposed to do it. And they showed up specifically to pray for me. And I thought that was the most amazing, beautiful thing ever. And ever since that moment, I'm like, I'm going to do this everywhere I go. Every time I travel, I don't make it huge publicly. So I don't put it on like my main feed. I'm not broadcasting it to the world because, again, I don't want 100 people or a lot of people to show up. It's whoever just happens to watch that story, and I put one post about it. Whoever feels in their heart and God tells them, go meet Matt, those are the people that God will bring to me.
Yeah.
And I've met just the most amazing people doing that.
Well, it's obvious when you talk about it that you value your people. And I've read the comments. There's a lot of people that value you. And do you read all the comments?
I do.
Yeah, you do. You're a comment reader.
I read the comments. I read all the DMs. If you give me a really thoughtful DM, some people give really short DMs and I'll maybe harder, I'll just read it. If you go out of your way and I can tell that you are giving me your heart and maybe writing something out. I've had people write pages of DMs to me. If it's that important for you to go out of your way to give me that, then I will go out of my way to give it back.
Yeah.
And I try. I remember the first time I did that, I made a post last summer and it was talking about people and the COVID vaccine. It was talking about the people that were alienated by their families for being the outlier because they were anti-vaccine or anti-COVID and they were shunned by their families. And I said, if you shunned your family for being anti-vaccine or anti-COVID, now we know the reality of the world. It's your responsibility to go back to that family that you shunned and apologize. They're your family. They'll forgive you. But they were kind of right in this situation. It's your responsibility to go back and apologize. And I made this video and I got 2 days of DMs, maybe thousands of DMs. Thank you, Matt. No one's ever said that before. I've been alienated by my family. It really sucks. I try to stay true to my conviction and my entire family doesn't want to talk to me. My friends don't want to talk to me. And for the first time, I heard someone say it out loud. And I got thousands of DMs that weekend. I think I spent 5 hours on a Saturday responding to every single one. And I didn't even crack it. So Sunday, I said, okay, I'm going to do it again. And I spent 5 hours responding to every DM on Sunday. I spent 10 hours that weekend responding to DMs. And by the end of Sunday night, I had more DMs than I started with. Because it just resonated with so many people. So many people just felt alienated by it. They just had conviction. They didn't want to do a certain thing. And now, looking back in retrospect, they weren't that wrong. They weren't crazy. I think valid arguments. But they were completely shunned by society and shunned by their families. People that they loved and trusted. Shunned by their parents. Shunned by their brothers and sisters. And I don't know. I felt really bad for them.
Do you find that people come to you, and by the way, to the audience, the lesson to take away, the moral of that story is don't send Matt Kim a DM unless you have something really, really good to say. Don't just say hi because he'll spend 10 hours saying hi back. Say something. Say something if you're going to send it. No, seriously. Do you find people who say, you're saying what I want to say, I just didn't know how to say it?
I get a lot of that.
Yeah.
I think I do. I get a lot of people approach me, maybe public, especially at places like the mall or the airport, especially because you got a lot of travelers in the airport.
You get recognized?
I get recognized quite a bit.
Yeah, you're recognizable.
And the most common thing that I get is, and it's not something that I expected, the most common response that I get when I meet people is, thank you for what you do.
Yeah.
And it never occurred to me that that's what people would say to me.
That's why you can't ever quit.
I mean,
when the doubt creeps in, I'm just telling you can't ever quit.
But I think, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything.
You are, though. And that's the thing. Because I know you, and I know the sincerity of your heart, and I know sometimes you question. You even put a video out the other day saying, are we doing any good here?
Yeah.
You know, and that's my paraphrase of it. And the answer to that, in short, is yes, you're doing a lot of good. And it's weird, the power that words have. It's really, maybe that's why that's the sword, is the word. Because it's really powerful because it goes out and the writer of Scripture talks about the word of God being like a double-edged sword, that separates the bone from the sinew and just really cuts into the soul and gets people. And I think that's one of the biggest compliments that I've ever gotten over my career is people say you're genuine. Like you're comfortable in your own skin. What you see is what you're going to get. We were at an event Friday night, and I was just there, crowd of people, and someone said to me, are you worried about going in here because people are going to stop you and all that? I said, it never crosses my mind. And they said, and then at the end of the night, they said, well, all night long you were taking pictures with people. And I said, I don't mind it because I don't think about it. I appreciate them, and I'm thankful for them, but I don't walk in I don't look for it, I don't think about it, it's not a big deal to me. But at the end of the day, it's people who say to me, you're genuine. Like you're comfortable in your own skin. You're not trying to be something you're not. You're not trying to be famous. I always tell people say, are you famous? I was like, no, I mean, I have a following, but I'm not famous. And that following I value because somewhere in there, my words touch their life, And I know that's happening with you. because you're doing this. I mean, I can see the trajectory of where you're going with your words and your podcast and your programming. It's huge. And I know it impacted me. I mean, to the point where I was sitting there having a cocktail one day, and I said, I'm going to send a DM to Matt Kim. And I did. And you responded back within 10 minutes. So, and here we are.
What do you think?
Best friends.
Best friends forever.
Forever. We're going to carve our initials in a tree out here in a little while.
What do you think created your shift from making political-only content to, I mean, I've seen you whip out your Bible, and
yeah,
I love what you're doing right now.
Thank you.
Because you're taking relevant things in our lives currently, and you're mixing in kind of a scriptural reference to it. I love it. I don't know a lot of people that do that.
Well, I had this, for the longest time I was in comedy, and then I was in political comedy, and then there was a demand for me to take the headlines of the day and just kind of blow it up with my take on it. And that is taxing to your soul. It's exhausting to look at this stuff. And I want to get into a little bit of that exhausting stuff with you before we're done today. But, I came from a ministry background. I came from ministry training, ministry discipleship, just men that poured themselves into my life for years as a young man, traveled all over the world. And it was like, in my heart, I heard this voice saying, all these things you've been talking about, you're not providing solutions. What if you provided people with what the Bible that was written thousands of years ago says about this condition of man? Because the condition of man hasn't changed. It just plays out in different scenarios. And I said, okay, that's a thought. And then JD, who's sitting across the room over there, he was in Alabama with me at Larry Taunton's lake house, and Malachi, who's in this building, I'm assuming, he's somewhere in here. He was sitting there. He goes, Chad, you ever thought about just taking your biblical worldview and applying it to current events? And I was like, funny you say that. So I'm not, I can be hard-headed, but in that case I said, no, I think I do need to go that route a little bit. And I know that it's a diversion from, to go off that rail where a lot of people have expected me to go over the years. And so, I don't know, just right now, that's the journey I'm on, man. And
I love it.
Dude, I've wrestled with it because I don't necessarily like it. I'd much rather go out there and say things that are fun and funny and have no real consequences.
Yeah.
Because there's no accountability with that.
Yeah, I feel like I did a couple of months of that where I was streaming and we were just making fun of everything and poking fun at everybody. And it's easy.
Yeah.
It's fun to just ridicule stupid people on the internet.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I did that for maybe a month, 2 months. I just don't feel like I was adding huge value.
Yeah.
It's so easy to just poke fun at everything. But the reality is that we need to provide solutions. And I love that you're intertwining scripture into your message because you're actually providing real valuable takeaways. And maybe it gets less views, but I think you're providing more impact. And that's something that I've been thinking about a lot. We don't see a lot of men in society that we look up to online especially. We don't see them have faith-based conversations. And because we don't see the men that we respect online, which we consume so much of the information from, because we don't see them have the conversations publicly, men don't have those conversations privately. They're not having in their homes, they're not having in their communities. If you have a group of 5 or 10 friends that you hang out with on a regular basis, it's like 1 or 2 guys that kind of talk about their faith in private. It's not the main conversation. And it's because the guys that we look up to online aren't having that conversation. But if the men that we look up to and respect start having that conversation publicly, then it will encourage other men to have that amongst their friend group. So I think you're leading by example by doing that because you're encouraging people to do it.
Well, I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. That's another confirmation for me because it's not to say, okay, hey, I'm going to pull my Bible out and we're going to do this because people immediately, you know what they do? I saw this thing, whenever you're going through something in life, it's like the algorithm knows what you're going through and they start sending you video clips on the reels and you're like, how does this thing know what I'm feeling right now? So right now I'm seeing all this stuff about men and what men go through and relationships and things like that. And like I saw one last night where this guy basically said, if I open up to you and expose my vulnerability as a man and you ever, like say in a relationship, your significant other ever uses that back against you in order to win an argument or something like that, As a man, I will never open up to you ever again. Like, because you took my vulnerability, and now it's just going to be, how am I doing? I'm all right. I'm not going to open up to you anymore because you use against you. Men have done that with society because they don't want to open up. They don't want to admit they're depressed. They don't want to admit that they're stressed or anxious. They don't want to admit that, hey, I find a lot of my value in this world based on how I relate to my woman or my work. Both of those things might be in shambles and have gone to shit. And so I'm sitting there going, okay, the world abuses me and says, okay, well, you're twice divorced. You've done this. You failed here. You failed all that. And it's like, you know what? I'm just going to clam up. I'm not going to talk about what God might be saying to me or doing in my life, or what truth might be impacting me, or what I'm meditating on, or what I think, because it's just going to be thrown back at me. What do you think about that? I mean, men are weird creatures, dude.
Men are weird creatures. I think we're being trained to be more emotional. I'm overly just not an emotional person to begin with. I think that's maybe my strength, if anything, because I don't get really mad. I don't get sad.
How old are you?
I'm older than people think.
Really?
Mm-hmm. How old do you think I am?
God, I don't know. I mean, I know you have a 2-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've got to think you're 30 years old.
42.
42.
Yeah.
See, Asians don't age.
No.
That's the thing.
I got them good genes.
You do. 42 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, I would have said early 30s with you. I've never even thought about it. The reason I ask that is because as I get older, I think the estrogen starts to creep in, and I've gotten more emotional as I've gotten older.
Yeah, I just don't. I'm not a big emotional believer. I've never been. I don't cry. I don't get real angry. I'm pretty even keel all times. I think that helps me make good decisions because I don't get emotional about my decisions. I think men maybe get too emotional in their decision making, and it makes you react. And sometimes once you kind of take away the emotion out of it, men are very logical creatures. You can make good decisions if you don't get so emotionally involved in things. And I think that may be what we need to go back to. You know,
a little stoicism.
A little stoicism. I'm okay with that. You know, if life sucks, get over it. It sucks for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, you're feeling sad, great. Like nobody cares. Get over it. You know,
back to talking about being with Pastor Doug Wilson, and I've been with some of his crowd of people before, and some of their events that they've done. Like they've written a lot of their own hymns where they're very man-centered, warrior-centered. Like we're going to go out and we're going to take the kingdom and we're going to do all that. And I was like, okay, that's sort of impressive. I like some of the words that they're saying. I see where they're going with that. And it's kind of getting men back to a warrior mentality. One of the things I've said in recent days is Jesus said, the kingdom of God suffers violence and the violent take it by force. We got to go back to having an element of violence about us. Capability of violence, I think, is what Jordan Peterson basically said, is not violent but capable of it.
Well, I think the war we're in, we're no longer in physical war.
Right.
I think we're in a digital age. To think that we're in a physical war and violence means physical violence is really analog. We're in a digital war. Why would anything else be? Why would the war be analog when everything else around us is digital? So actually, what it is, we need to win online. We're not winning online. The left and the extreme liberals and the Satanists are winning the internet battle. And we have the ability to win it because that's where the war is. And people think that, just because we need to man up means we could go fight someone physically. No, that's not it anymore. Physical war is over. Actually, I don't even think real wars are physical any longer. It's all propaganda war. Right? It's about what people perceive the world to be. When they show you death and destruction, it's just more validation that it's occurring, but it's all propaganda. The war is in our minds. And that's what we're fighting for every day, is who controls your mind. And we need to fight and bring that back is really what it is. I think, so when people say, we're going to go to war and men need to be warriors, yeah, we need to be warriors. But the war and the battlefield is the internet now.
Yeah, and now we've got people who are crying over internet bullying.
Let it go.
It's kind of hit the button, turn it off, block them. Mute that conversation. But we're not tough. We're not mentally tough. And we're not critical thinkers anymore. Have you seen that? I mean, like that's been a big thing for me now for a couple of years, is the fact that we're not critical thinkers. We don't really, I had a guy today, what was the thing? I said, I was talking about the censorship that like these companies out there like NewsGuard. And NewsGuard wants to come along and put their little stamp of approval or disapproval on different, media things that are put out there. And they're basically saying, we're not going to let you think for yourself. We're going to tell you, there were no fact checkers until people started exposing the truth, online. And I mean, just the fact that our YouTube stays under a constant struggle from, talking about all the stuff we talk about. And I was like, I can think for myself. And I had a guy who commented on there, I get a kick out of these trolls, who said, you can't think for yourself. You can't find your ass with a roadmap. And I was like, I found it and I wiped you off of it. So, it's like, and as soon as I sent that, it was such a good little cut. And the guy had already blocked me. That pissed me off.
Oh,
Get him? It pissed me off. This guy will never see that. But I don't know. It's a weird thing. Like, you have this stuff coming our way. And it's like you can't even keep up with it. Like, you just did a video. Somebody was talking about what's it called? Project 2025? And you did a response to that whole thing. And now if you go on the internet, everything is Trump is for 2020, Project 2025. I'm sitting there going, I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
Like, that wasn't on my radar scope at all. And now you're guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. Everybody, that's what we're wanting to do. And we're being bombarded with this kind of stuff. And it's like, I'm fighting a fight that I didn't know that was a front,
I mean, everything about the internet is they are trying to actively program your minds. They're trying to control you. And it makes sense. If you are a person that rules the world and you are in this elite club of the puppet masters of life, then you want people and the populace to be controllable. And the way to be able to control them, especially at mass, is you put them in categories. You want the conservatives to be a certain level of conservative. You don't want them to veer outside of this specific conservative lane. You want the liberals to be this type of liberal. You don't want them to veer outside this lane. You want to put people into a spreadsheet so that you can move people around, you can collate, you can mix them up, you can do whatever you want to do. But you want people to have a certain label, and that's your only label. If you are a variable, they don't like that. Because now you're messing up their spreadsheet. You're messing up their algorithm. You're messing up everything about what they're doing.
The filing system is broken at that point.
You're breaking their Dewey Decimal System by putting that one book in the wrong place.
Right.
They want you to be exactly what you are, because then they can feed you exactly what they want to feed you. They can have you think about what they want you to think about, and they can control it as a group, as an entire column. They don't want to deal with individuals. And if you're a person out there that's trying to encourage people to get out of these predetermined lanes and think for yourself, to make your own decisions about life, and to question the lanes that we've been predetermined to be in, they don't like that.
Yeah.
They don't like that at all, because now you're creating chaos on their spreadsheet. And again, if you are in charge of 6 billion people in the world, you don't want to deal with 6 billion individuals. You want to deal with 4 categories of people and move them around accordingly, because actually, for you as the leader of society, it's easier.
Yeah.
And here we are, you and me, creating chaos on their spreadsheet, and that pisses them off. They're like, all right, we're just not going to let people see them, because not only are you doing it for yourself, but you're encouraging other people to do it. And, the power of the share, the power of the algorithm, power of views is that if a lot of people start to gather, now you're starting to create major in their organization system. They don't like that.
No, they don't. Golly, that's profound, dude. And I've said something similar to that for years, and my audience has heard it a bunch about categorizing people based on the labels. That way they don't have to deal with you. Mm-hmm. But you touched on something right there, because I think that's what the powers that be here in this country, if they can say, okay, you got left and right, Republicans, Democrats, if we can keep them polarized, we know where they fall on either side, and we can throw this big trope out there that makes them fall under a certain umbrella. It eliminates free thinking. Mm-hmm. It really does, or at least it does in terms of the propaganda machine. And then you got people trying to break out of the matrix, and it's like, whoa, Neo, we're gonna send the guys after you to shut you down, because it's wild. It's wild. Have you thought of yourself as more of a political guy or a cultural guy, or where do you think you fall in that? I mean, let's go back to categories again. Have you ever thrown yourself into that, or is it just like, screw it, I just want to talk about what I want to talk about?
I just want to talk about whatever I want to talk about. And it's whatever I'm thinking about at the moment. Usually if I'm at lunch with a group of people and whatever they're talking about, maybe I'm not familiar with it. I don't consume a lot of content. Actually, I've learned to turn almost all of it off. So really? I consume very little content. And So if I hear people talking about it, then I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I'd like to know more. And then that kind of spurs my interest and my intrigue. And then I'll start reading, and I'll spend maybe an hour reading on one topic, on what are the left saying, what's the right saying, what are the TikTokers saying, what the Instagram are saying, what is everyone saying. And then I'll kind of put all of that together and say, okay, what do I think? And that's when I start writing out my video.
Yeah.
So I try to pick topics based on what I feel like are important to people or what I found interesting enough to make me pause and think. And that's really the matrix in which I decide on what I make a video about or what I speak about. I watch almost nobody. And I think once I turned everything off is really when I started thinking the clearest. I want to say about a year and a half ago, I used to be a huge consumer of content. So I want to see what Fox News is saying. I want to see what all the different channels are saying. I want to know what the Daily Wire is saying. I want to know what Patrick Bet-David is saying. I want to know what Tim Pool is saying. And all of a sudden, I realized that I'm saying what I hear. I'm saying and regurgitating the talking points
You become an echo.
that I like the best.
Yeah, you become
Not
an
what
echo.
I believe, what I like the best. Once I turn it all off, now you're forced to come up with your own conclusions. And sometimes people say, Matt, well, your take was very different than what other people are saying. I don't know that. I don't listen to them. How do I know if it aligns with other people or not? Some people say, well, you're falling out of what the talking points of the party are. I don't know what the talking points are. How am I supposed to know that? Yeah. I'm not listening to them. I think once I turned it all off is when I was able to think the clearest. And I have no incentive going back. It's almost like you unplug yourself and you're like, oh, like it's actually nice out here. You know? But I think that's something that people need to be conscious of because as AI grows, as we get more into this technology future, we are actively consuming more and more content than ever before. And they are literally programming our minds. And I think for sure, at least in my daughter's generation, that in her future, she's going to have a conscious decision to make. It's going to be a conscious choice. Do you want to physically plug in and let us take over all of your thinking and all of the control of your life? Or do you want to live outside of it, but you're going to live a less good life?
Yeah.
If you plug in, you're going to have a better life. You're going to have more luxury. And I don't even know what luxury means anymore. You're going to have more luxury. You're going to have a more comfortable life, but you have to give up your control. And 80% of people in the world, maybe 90% of people in the world, will actively choose to be plugged in because it means better things, shinier objects, better content, more endorphin hits. People will choose that path. We need to actively start teaching our children. It's something I think about all the time. I need to actively teach my child that when she's presented with the opportunity to make that choice, again, it will be a choice, that I hope she chooses, I want to live free. I want to be my own thinker. I want to have the ability to make my own flaws and make my own mistakes in life. Again, most people will choose the control side. And we see it all the time. And anyone that argues against that is ridiculous. Look around what would happen in the last 4 years. Most people have chosen, I'd rather be controlled.
You brought it up on your show recently about going to liberal cities and how they're shitholes. I've got a friend who's in San Francisco right now, and I told her, I said, don't step in the shit. They got fecal maps in San Francisco, and then you've got needles in the street and all this kind of stuff. And you guys discussed why these places that tend to be liberal strongholds are that way. My takeaway on that, and you guys had y'all's conclusions, and nobody really believes anything. You guys were talking about that, how there's no belief structure here, that everybody aligns to a common value system, and they just believe whatever they want. And so consequently, they're almost like anarchy and entropy. Everything just falls apart. And I was thinking, there's also a huge amount of government dependence where there's no personal responsibility. Nobody's got to do anything. But when we live in a day and age where the demand is coming, where you're going to have to choose, am I going to take responsibility? It's going to be uncomfortable. God knows critical thinking ain't easy. I mean, you've already said on this, and how long we've been talking, JD, how long we've been going? I don't even have my phone. Hour and 15 minutes. We got time. I dropped my phone. I don't even have my deal. I don't have my clock. But we've already talked about how you said no to the easy route of like sponsorships and things like that. You're not listening to the talking heads out there to help determine what you're echoing out to the world on your own content. You made a clip this morning where you've questioned, is this the right thing for me to be doing, to continually be going away from my family for a day at a time or whatever? Those are all hard decisions you're making. None of that is comfortable. It's not an easy decision to make. But it's going to come to a point where everybody's got to make certain decisions, or else, everybody lets Elon Musk put a microchip in their brain and, we can have push button orgasms and live in a virtual reality, and, we can scroll through stuff, in our eyelids, I guess. I don't know. Or we can go out there and, live in some Book of Eli type apocalyptic world. It's going to be hard for people to choose that.
I reference the Hunger Games a lot.
Yeah.
And in the Hunger Games, people see the Capitol and like, oh, the Capitol's bad guys. But the reality is Capitol is where everyone wants to live. It's kind of crazy, it's extravagant, and life is better.
Yeah.
Most people would rather live in the Capitol, given push or shove. Mm-hmm. I want to live in District 11 or 14 or whatever the last district is. I want to live out there.
Yeah.
That's where I would prefer to live. It's less comfortable. You get less modern convenience, but at least you have a level and certain amount of freedom away from all the craziness of the world. I think there's going to be a group of people that are going to choose to live out and be a part of the resistance. And if you're going to be a part of the resistance, life is going to be tougher. It's not going to be as nice. It's not going to be as cush. And you got to be okay with that, because those people need to exist. Otherwise, it's over. People are so concerned about what's going on in San Francisco. You don't live in San Francisco. Care about what's going on in your own communities, in your own family, in your own life. Take care of your own family and household first, and then worry about San Francisco. You're so worried about what's going on with the gay parade in San Francisco. San Francisco's gone anyway. Forget San Francisco. Yeah. Figure out your own community first.
Yeah. And there are people who hear you say that, talk about Hunger Games and District, 14 of the Capitol, and they're like, that's fiction, it's a movie. Yeah, we thought 1984 was fiction too. We didn't think that we'd be living in the Matrix type reality where people are unplugging and they're choosing to, hey, you can close your eyes and go back to the way you always thought the world was, or you can get, quote, red pilled, and now you can open your eyes to see what's really going on. I don't trust any institution in this country anymore. Mm-mm. I don't trust the media. Mm-mm. I don't trust the courts. I don't trust the federal or the state government. I don't trust the education system. I don't trust the medical system. The corporate tyranny that's out there ruling and reigning over us. I mean, you saw when we just got done with whatever you want to call it, Pride Month, where everybody slapped a rainbow on their logo. And you got no choice but to either go out into the wilderness or swallow that crap and support them,
Why do we give up the rainbow?
Yeah, that pisses me off.
Because a nice evening, maybe a little bit of rain, I'm with my family, there's a rainbow in the sky, and we're like, oh, that's really pretty. My daughter gets really excited when she sees a rainbow. And in my mind, I'm like, that sucks that we just gave it up. It's a wonder of the world. It used to be for everybody.
Yeah.
How do we let one side just completely debo something that is so beautiful and so natural? How do we just give it up?
And what do we do every time there's a storm or whatever? We see that rainbow. Everybody pulls their camera out. They take pictures. They send it to their friends. Oh my God, who sees the rainbow right now? We do that. And or if there's anything close to a rainbow design on a T-shirt or something, people are like, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not going to play that game.
That sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks that when my daughter, we're at, I don't know, a Target or a Costco or whatever, and she sees a little T-shirt and it's got rainbow on it. She's like, she thinks it's pretty and she's pointing at it. It sucks that I have to be like, should I buy this for her? I don't want to think that. Why do I have to think that? Yeah. Kids like rainbows.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
I know. But we gave it up. We gave up so much.
How do we just give it up?
There's so many things. I mean, there's a list of things we could talk about. All the stuff that I talked about that I don't trust anymore. We gave all that up.
Should we start a movement to win back the rainbow? Is that the stance?
We should all move to Moscow, Idaho, and
beautiful there.
And join Doug. Oh God, it's gorgeous up there.
It's so beautiful.
It's beautiful. Even the rainbows are pretty too. But yeah, there's a movement to take. There should be a movement to take everything back. Yeah. Like one of the things that the church used to be in charge of education. The church used to be in charge of welfare. It wasn't that, but it was they took care of the poor. And the church just abdicated. They just walked away from society and said, we're going to go cloister up over here. And if they try to get involved, all the talking heads come out and start spouting off what they don't know about the separation of church and state. But we did. And the church is easy to pick on, especially the American church, which is in shambles, in my opinion.
Yes.
But it's like you quit. You gave it all up because you took the path of least resistance just so you could be left alone with no persecution.
The church has failed a lot of its following.
Yeah.
And the church has to take some responsibility in that. Why can't the church even agree on basic things? Church are splitting up left and right. A lot of these big, huge mega churches are becoming just huge businesses, mega businesses, which I don't agree with.
Billion-dollar corporations.
Everyone's got a cafe. Everyone's got merch that they're selling.
Bookstores.
You walk in and it's like walking into Costco before you go to church.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Jesus walked in and used to overturn
just
all of that, flip
stuff.
all those tables. And now every church you go to, that's the way it is. I think the church has to take some responsibility for leading the flock in the incorrect direction. Yeah. And we've let non-masculine men take over the church as well.
True.
I think that's been a big problem. I think men should have been stronger in their conviction. I think we've elevated people that maybe should not have been elevated to certain positions. And I think part of it is that the men that should have been in those roles decided that they're going to chase wealth and fame instead. Maybe it's the men's fault. They let the weaker men take over the church.
What he said is true, folks. I'm looking at this camera when I tell you. What he just said, and you don't brush past it, the masculine men aren't running things anymore.
No.
And he said it, and I'm emphasizing it because I mean it. We've turned it over to some beta, soy level, limp-wristed cucks out there who are just okay to sit back, collect the money, and wear their expensive shoes and watches and their whatever get up they're wearing today, and just turn that over to some self-help motivational, ultimately, I'm the holy trinity of me, myself, and I, bow down at my altar, and there's no conviction, there's no brokenness, there's no repentance. That's a big reason why I walked away from church ministry years ago, because I was so disenchanted with what I saw, and I was frustrated with it. But there is a movement coming back where I think there are some people out there, some masculine men who are saying, okay, we're taking this back. And I hope that's true.
I mean, the reality is that if you want to affect real change in society and you want to affect real change in the world and in your communities, it takes a masculine man to make selfless sacrifice. Mm-hmm. That's the only way it actually works. That you have to be willing to give something up for the betterment of others. And most masculine men out there currently won't give up anything. They only want to benefit themselves, or even if they want to do good for other people, they don't want to give anything up to do it. There's no selflessness involved. There's no sacrifice involved. And that's why we're in the situation that we are. We need to be willing to selflessly sacrifice maybe some money, maybe some fame, maybe some clicks and views, whatever it may be. We need to be willing to selflessly sacrifice for the benefit of others. And if the masculine men of society were willing to do that, society would change. We just don't do it yet.
Yeah. Well, there's an interesting passage that even when it's quoted, the last part is often left out, and that's in the book of Revelation where it says, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb, the word of their testimony, and here's the part that gets left out, they love not their life even unto death. That's the difference. Nobody's willing to be sacrificial. Nobody's willing to get on that cross, if you will, and be that martyr that makes the difference. That's where we're at. It's all about self-preservation.
And I get it. I mean, that's how you stay alive.
Yeah, well, that is the basic deal. How long can I? But again, I've got, whatever it is, 75, 80 years on this planet, and then either there's an eternity or there's not. I mean, I'm either worm food and dust or there's something next. And I would like to spend the time that I've got working as hard as I can, diligently exploring to see if that what's next is real and what I need to do to be a part of that. And hey, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'm worm food, well, okay, I go to sleep one day and that's it. I'm done, you know? I'm not convinced that that's the truth, though. I do believe, as the scripture says, that God put eternity in the hearts of men. And I think that's why we think on these things. People get lost in organized religion. They get disenchanted with the church. They turn a blind eye to truth because they're like, oh, I don't want to hear somebody. You're throwing water on the fire alarm, not the fire, and you're shooting the messenger. And I get it that there's some pretty flawed people out there that are the messengers, but here we are. What's resonating with you right now? Like, when you're spending time alone, you're on an airplane or you're in a rental car in an Uber or whatever. Like, do you look out the window and go, okay, this is what I'm thinking on, or this is what's bothering me? Do you get concerned with where we're headed as far as the election is concerned, or what the ramifications of that could be if?
No, I think about election, obviously, and I think about politics a lot. But I think there is a flaw in that we think that politics and state will save society, but the reality is it won't. Mm-hmm. Actually, no president change has ever made society better. It just doesn't happen. It actually has to start at home and within our own communities and our own values. And again, we elevate people that mimic our society. If we think that the politicians are broken, it's because we're broken. I think we are in the precipice of a revival. I think every 60 years or so, the country goes through revival, and 60, 70 years or so, and we're at that right now. There are three things that create revival. One is intellectual. People need to start realizing that society around them is broken, start seeing the lies, the deception. People are already awakening to that. The second stage would be emotional, so people need to start getting upset about it, pissed off or sad or angry or whatever it is, but start reacting to that. Mm-hmm. We're there too. The third is just will. What are you going to do about it? Are you willing to change? Are you willing to give up? Are you willing to sacrifice for embetterment? And I feel like we're at the precipice of that. That's why you're going through the transition that you are. That's why I'm going through the transition I am.
Yeah.
Countless conversations with men that I'm having right now are people that are like, enough is enough. And what it is we just need God. Mm-hmm. I see a lot of that, just so much of that recently. I think we're at the precipice of a revival in this country.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Like what you said a second ago, God, it just poked me in my heart. And I want to remember it. JD, help me remember it. When you said no change at the state level or anything has ever brought about a transformation. It's never brought about real lasting change. I'm going to explore that. I'm going to meditate on that because it's obviously true. But that is a worldview changing thing for me in terms of the pattern that I've been on for a number of years, because I think my takeaway from this conversation, and I hope others are getting it too, is that we get proactive in bringing solutions, real solutions, into our world versus just pointing at the darkness and saying, hey, we can ridicule the darkness, we can make fun of the darkness. And the darkness is there, but how are we shining the light, you know? And it doesn't have to be some super spiritual thing. I think we can, again, back to truth. I think it's just a matter of saying, look, facts over feelings. I have my apparel stuff. I've sold T-shirts for years. I've always tried to put humor stuff out there. I've got one out there now that says facts trump your feelings. And we ran an ad on it, threw a couple of bucks behind it on Facebook. They rejected it on political reasons.
Really?
And I was like, well, it's not a political shirt. It took them 2 minutes to review it and come back and say, we're still rejecting it because it's got the word Trump in it. Yeah. Obviously, that's my takeaway.
Yeah.
And that's fine, whatever. That's their deal. I'm friends with this actually exists, the head of conservative policy with Meta. I went to dinner with him in San Antonio. He's a super good guy. Don Jr. actually recommended that we connect and through my buddy Christian Collins. And so we went to dinner, and he's a super good guy. And I was tempted to send that to him, and I was like, nah, he's a DEI hire. Like he's just there because they need to have somebody that is conservative.
Yeah.
You're right. But I'm sitting there going, the fact that, I can't even say the word Trump, and they're going to reject it in a deal like that. But the T-shirt, the sentiment of the T-shirt is, your facts don't care about your feelings. We got to get our feelings out of the way, and just let truth have its way with us, and just kind of get transformed by it, and get back to embracing some things. Like, when they try to label everybody and back to that point, and put us in a certain category. Well, that Project 2025, I can read that list of stuff, and I didn't until a couple of days ago. I didn't know it existed. And you did a video on it, and I still had not read the list. When I saw your video, and I was like, man, I haven't read the list. Then they started accusing Trump of it, and Trump was like, well, I don't really know what it is, but anyway, he made that post on Truth Social. So finally I went and read the list, and I said, okay, I could see where you guys are getting bent out of shape on this thing.
Yeah. Actually, I agree with a lot of it.
But I'm like, I'm not really having a problem here with most of this stuff. I'm pretty cool with it. Excuse me. Made me laugh because I was sitting there going, yeah. All this stuff that, first of all, if it pisses off the progressive left, I'm usually okay with it. And hey, toss me a water, JD, if you don't mind. I just tried to kill myself on camera. And it's not the first or last time. I'll do that. Thank you. You need one?
I'm good.
You good? So, but I'm reading that thing, and I was like, okay. I don't, but again, they want to take even stuff like that and say, you're an evil person if you believe in stuff like that, Yeah. And I was like, well, I'm not aligning myself with any, what is it, the Heritage Foundation or whoever, or any political PAC or anything else like that. It's like, I just know what I believe, and I'm okay with the world knowing what I believe. I do believe in the nuclear family. I do believe in, the values that are surrounding those kind of things, but they're going to villainize you no matter what.
Yeah.
So where do we go, man? Where do we go from here? It's crazy because I keep saying, listen, they're going to call you a racist. They're going to call you a transphobe and a homophobe and a misogynist and a bigot and a Nazi. They're going to call you all these things. Just go ahead and let the name calling happen.
I like it.
And just keep on, because they're going to call you that. You've already been labeled, but you might as well just keep speaking truth anyway, right? So
the labels don't bother me. The labels don't bother me at all. Yeah. It is what it is. People will find something to categorize you in, and that's society. They want to categorize you. Again, the labeling thing is a intentional thing. They want to label you because they want you to fall in these columns so that they can move you around and control society and control the ants of the world. If you fall out of a label, they don't like it.
Well, you got to go to a meetup, so I'm going to let you go. Man, I can't even tell you how much I appreciate you coming down here or flying over today. And I'm like that in that regard. Like, I'd much rather be with people. And I've jumped on a plane a few times to go do stuff and with people. And what's next for you? You got any big interviews lined up, or you just make it up as you go?
Every day is a new adventure.
Yeah.
I just go where I feel like God tells me to go. That's how I've been living my life, especially the last month, 2 months, is whatever I feel like I'm supposed to do is what I'll go do. I feel like I was supposed to be here. I feel like it was supposed to happen. I feel like we were supposed to meet. Therefore, I'm here. Like, who am I to question? I feel like that's something that I've been thinking a lot about recently. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out reason of why, purpose, etc. And I thought that was I came to the realization that was really arrogant of me, to think that I could understand God's plan. It's like a 60. We live in a 3D world. I'm trying to figure out a 6D solution. Yeah. A 6D problem. It's just not possible. And I've let all that go. And I'm just doing what I feel like I'm supposed to do to the best of my ability. And we'll see where the world takes it.
Well, you're doing it right, for whatever that means. I don't even know.
I don't know either.
I just know that there's something. What's the right term? There's something supernatural about what you're doing. I know you didn't set out to do it that way, but you could just tell when there's favor on something. You know what I'm saying? When it's just like, okay, there's a trajectory here that you can't explain in the terms of man's vernacular. It's just sort of. I've always said, people want to know my success story. Whatever success I've had, you have to be comfortable with the vocabulary of the divine, because there's no other way to explain it. God just did something. And I could see that with you. And so, I was like, it was one of those deeper things where I was like, I need to know this guy. I want to know this guy. And I'm always hesitant to reach out to people because I'm like, nobody wants to come on this show. Nobody cares about this little podcast that I do. I've been doing it forever, and I've had some great folks over the years on this thing, but I'm always hesitant to just ask people. So it's humbling and it means a lot that you came. And I want to do more. I want to stay connected with you and just keep on. Because I think one of the things that I see is there's a network of men that's being put together.
That's exactly what it is.
And I think it's important,
I think that's exactly what's going on. I feel like God is sending me to all these different cities to meet with all these key people. And I've said it to you before, I feel like there are all these parallel storylines that are going. And we're waiting for this big conversion event. And I feel like I'm being sent out there to start recruiting and start gathering for this convergence event. I don't know what this event is. I have no idea what it looks like. I just know that every single person I've met in the last few months are a part of the story, and it's supposed to happen. And I'm so excited because something big's going to happen. And
I feel
when
it.
it does, it's going to be
It's
fascinating.
It makes my baby jump, It's just I can feel it down in my gut. It's something that's there because I don't know either. But
No
I'm trying.
clue.
But I tell you what, if Matt Kim's involved with it, I'm in. That's the criteria for me. Matt Kim's involved, I'm in. I want in. So I appreciate you. People can find you on social media. I encourage them to follow you on Instagram because that's where you do a lot of your. Do you do TikTok stuff?
I do TikTok.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna have to stop my TikTok and create a whole new account. I think I've just pissed off the TikTok people too bad over the years.
TikTok's tough.
It's brutal.
But I really enjoy TikTok.
Do you?
I think it's different. I think every social media app is different. You have to treat them different. I think if you try to treat them the same, it doesn't work. You have to treat them as individual because the people there are different. The audience is different. If you're a TikTok consumer, TikTok is your platform. If you're an Instagram consumer, Instagram is your platform. You have to treat it as such. If you try to treat them all the same, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I think you have to engage with the people differently. I think what people want, what works is different. And once you kind of respect it as such, it works out pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people who push back and say, "Oh, you shouldn't be on there." I was like, "Yeah, I understand, but the nature of using a platform to get a message out there, I'm going to use everything that's available."
I think
to me if I
TikTok
can.
is the most engaged platform, meaning the comment section is the most vibrant. There are more people engaged on TikTok than on Instagram, actually. People consume longer on TikTok than they do on Instagram. It's just hard to reach them.
Yeah.
But you have ability for discoverability on TikTok that other apps don't have. So any video can go super viral. So you have the ability to reach and grab a larger audience. And I really like live streaming on TikTok.
Never done it.
TikTok
I
is,
should, but I never have. I see in your link tree you've got that.
you should definitely live stream on TikTok
Really?
because it's the only platform that gives you discoverability in your live stream. So if you go live on Instagram, only the people that follow you have access to you. If you go on YouTube, then your subscribers get to see what you're doing. On TikTok, if you go live, you have the ability to hit the main algorithm with your live stream. So maybe you're live streaming to 50 or 100 or 200 people, and all of a sudden you have 2,000 people because you hit the main algorithm. So it gives you ultimate discoverability. And sometimes I'll be live on TikTok and I'll get 100, 200 people follow me off a live stream because I never knew you existed. You all of a sudden, the algorithm feeds me your live stream. I sit around for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, listen to you talk, and now I want to know more.
Yeah.
So I think that's the only app that has that. So I encourage you to do TikTok. I think there's a lot of conservatives on TikTok. There's a lot of faith-based conversations on TikTok. It's a lot more based than people think.
Yeah.
And people, especially the politicians, they'll say, all I see on TikTok is like all this trans stuff. I'm like, the algorithm shows you exactly what you want to see.
What you want to see.
Stop saying that publicly because all you're doing is telling people
That's
what
right.
you like to watch.
That's exactly right, and that's what pops up.
Yeah.
Matt Attack what on Instagram?
Matt Attack 009.
009.
Don't
I don't know
ask
how
me
many
what
zeros.
the 009 is. I don't remember why he created that.
Yeah. What is it on TikTok?
It's on every other platform. It's free Matt Kim.
Okay. I love it. Website?
Matt Kim podcast.
I just tell people search Matt Kim podcast.
If you Google Matt Kim or whatever your preferred
Not
form
Matt and Kim. That's a whole other thing that I don't know what it is, but it does pop up.
whatever your
populates, yeah.
preferred doom scroll mechanism is, If you search Matt Kim, you'll find me.
Yeah, I've found that people are lazy. They don't want to type names into search bars.
And then you don't really want to care.
Yeah,
you don't really care that much.
Listen, if you're not going to get into, listen, don't even talk to me about critical thinking if you're not willing to at least type somebody's name in a search bar.
You can find anyone in the world these days if you want to.
I appreciate you. We're instant. That's what I say about people when I just know our souls connect, and I appreciate you. And I'm thankful for you. And I do pray for you. I pray for your family for what that's worth, and because I know they're spending a little time away from you, and you're a good husband, you're a good dad, and there's a lot of challenges, man.
Thank you. And if anyone is watching and they want to support Chad, what I tell everyone to do is that the number one thing you can do to help out a creator that you follow, that you watch, you listen, you consume, is to share the content.
Share it.
So my final word, if I can, is share Chad's content.
Yeah, same with Matt.
That's the best way it works. The algorithm feeds off of the amount of people that share. That's the best way you can support.
Yeah. And go watch his stuff. I mean, I'm telling you, it's so good. Tucker Carlson, years ago when he was one of the hosts on Fox and Friends, when I first went viral 2015, he made a comment. He goes, "You are supernaturally articulate." And so I took that phrase and I put it at the top of my website for years. It said, "Supernaturally articulate." Tucker Carlson, he doesn't know me from Adam's house cat at this point, but that's okay, man. And I thought about that when you were talking about doing your interview with him. All right. Guys, watchchad.com is where you can find me. I'm out on the road. I'm doing live stuff. Maybe one of these days we will have that convergence, and I'll get some of these guys out there on the road with me. I'd love to do that, actually. That'd be fun. Get everybody on stage. We'll throw up some armchairs and just get us an audience and see who wants to talk. That could be some fun stuff. But follow Matt Kim. Check him out on all the socials. Absorb his content. What he's saying is valuable, and it's thought out. It's deliberate. It's not just, hey, because a lot of times I'm like, let me just see what comes off the top of my head. He's not doing that, and I appreciate that. But even when he is thinking out loud, it's profound stuff. So I want you to get it, consume it, make it a part of your routine, weekly, daily, whatever your ritual is, make it a ritual. But I appreciate you guys so much. I want you to join the community at thechadprathershow.com. Drop us your email address. We will not blow you up, but we will send you a newsletter on Fridays. And we just want to keep you abreast of what's going on because we value you, your family at this point. And those of you who have been here for so many years, can't thank you enough. So if you want to come find me out on the road, watchchad.com. And until next time, take care of yourselves. We love you. God bless you. Bye.